When my 11-year-old son stood up in that courtroom and asked the judge if he could show everyone something, my ex-husband's face went completely white. The judge looked at me, then at my son, and said, "What is it, young man?" My son pulled out a USB drive from his jacket pocket and held it up. "Everything," he said quietly. "I have everything. But let me take you back to where this all started, because you need to understand just how close I came to losing it all." It was a Tuesday morning in March when I found the divorce papers on the kitchen counter. Not handed to me, not discussed. Just there, next to the coffee maker, like a grocery list. 23 years of marriage reduced to a stack of legal documents with my husband's signature already on them. I stood there in my bathrobe, hands shaking, reading words like irreconcilable differences and asset division while the coffee pot beeped behind me. My son, Tyler, came downstairs for breakfast. He was in 5th grade then, tall for his age, with his father's dark hair but my green eyes. "Mom?" he said, seeing my face. "What's wrong?" I tried to fold the papers, hide them, protect him the way I'd been protecting him for months from the truth that his father and I were falling apart. But Tyler was smart. He'd always been observant, the kind of kid who noticed everything. He saw the papers before I could put them away. "Is Dad leaving?" he asked. I couldn't lie to him. "It looks that way, honey." Tyler didn't cry. He just nodded slowly, picked up his backpack, and said, "I'll be in my room." Later, I would learn that's when it started. That's when my son, at 11 years old, decided to become a detective. The marriage had been crumbling for 2 years, maybe longer. My husband, Richard, was a successful financial advisor. We lived in a nice house in the suburbs, had 2 cars, took vacations. From the outside, we looked perfect, but inside those walls, I was drowning. Richard had become cold, critical. He questioned every purchase I made, every decision I took. He made me feel small, incompetent, like I couldn't be trusted with anything important. "I handle the finances," he'd say. "You don't need to worry about it." I'd been a stay-at-home mom since Tyler was born, and over the years, I'd lost touch with my own career, my own financial independence. Richard liked it that way. He had control, and I had become dependent. When he filed for divorce, I panicked. I had no income, no recent work history. I'd given up my accounting job to raise Tyler, to manage our home, to support Richard's career. Now, at 45 years old, I was facing the prospect of starting over with nothing. I scraped together money to hire a lawyer. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she was honest with me from the start. "This is going to be difficult," she told me in her office. "Your husband has already retained Marcus Webb. He's one of the best divorce attorneys in the state, and he's expensive. That tells me your husband is serious, and he's prepared to fight." "Fight for what?" I asked. "We'll split things 50-50, right? That's how it works?" Patricia's expression was grim. "That's how it's supposed to work. But if Richard has hired Webb, he's planning something. We need to get access to all financial records immediately. Bank statements, investment accounts, property deeds, everything." But when we requested the documents, Richard's lawyer objected at every turn. Delayed, obfuscated, claimed documents were being located or still being compiled. Weeks turned into months. And then the hearing date arrived, and I still didn't have a complete picture of our assets. The morning of the asset division hearing, I put on my best dress, a navy blue one I'd bought years ago for Richard's office Christmas party. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely zip it up. Tyler came into my room as I was trying to fix my hair. "You look nice, Mom," he said. "Thank you, sweetie." I turned to him. "You're going to stay with Mrs. Patterson next door during the hearing, okay? I'll be back this afternoon." Tyler's jaw tightened. "I want to come." "Honey, it's not appropriate. It's going to be boring legal stuff, and I want to come," he repeated, more firmly. "Please, Mom, I need to be there." Something in his voice made me pause. There was a determination I'd never heard before. "Why, Tyler?" He looked down at his sneakers. "Because he's lying, and I can prove it." My heart stopped. "What are you talking about?" "Dad's been lying about money?" "About lots of things. I've been keeping track." He pulled out his tablet, the old one Richard had given him 2 Christmases ago, when he'd upgraded Tyler's to a newer model. "It's all here, Mom. Everything." I should have asked more questions. I should have looked at what he had. But we were late, and I was overwhelmed, and I made a split-second decision. Bring it, I said. Bring the tablet. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, more like a conference room. Judge Linda Morrison presided, a woman in her early 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. Richard sat on the opposite side with his lawyer, Marcus Webb, a man in an expensive suit who looked like he'd never lost a case in his life. Richard wouldn't look at me. He stared straight ahead, his expression blank. Patricia Chen laid out our position. I was entitled to half of all marital assets. I'd sacrificed my career to support the family. I deserved alimony and child support. Fair and reasonable requests. Then Marcus Webb stood up, and everything fell apart. Your Honor, Webb began, my client has been more than generous. He's offered Mrs. Anderson 40% of their liquid assets, child support at the state-recommended level, and 3 years of rehabilitative alimony to help her transition back to the workforce. 40%. 3 years. I'd been married for 23 years, and I was being offered 3 years of support. Furthermore, Webb continued, pulling out documents, we have evidence that Mrs. Anderson has been financially irresponsible throughout the marriage. Multiple credit card debts, excessive spending, failure to maintain a budget. He handed papers to the judge. I looked at Patricia, confused. What debts? I whispered. Webb wasn't done. My client has been forced to manage all household finances because Mrs. Anderson demonstrated a consistent inability to handle money responsibly. He's paid off her debts multiple times. He's covered her overspending. He's essentially been supporting her financially irresponsible behavior for years. That's not true, I said, half standing. Judge Morrison held up a hand. Mrs. Anderson, please sit down. You'll have an opportunity to respond. Patricia was speed-reading through the documents Webb had provided. Her face grew tight. Your Honor, we've never seen these documents before. This is the first we're hearing of any debts or financial irresponsibility. Webb smiled. These are credit card statements and bank records, all part of the marital financial history. If Miss Chen had bothered to review them during discovery, we requested all financial documents months ago, Patricia shot back. These were never provided. An oversight, Webb said smoothly, but they're here now. The documents showed credit cards in my name with thousands of dollars in debt, shopping sprees, cash advances, luxury purchases, but I'd never made those charges. I barely used credit cards. Richard handled all of that. Your Honor, I said, my voice breaking, I didn't make those charges. I don't even have access to most of those accounts. My husband, Your Honor, Webb interrupted. Mrs. Anderson is going to claim ignorance, as she has throughout this marriage. The fact is, she was content to spend freely while my client worked to support the family and clean up her messes. We need time to review these documents, Patricia said, to verify their authenticity, How much time, Miss Chen? Judge Morrison asked. We've been scheduling this hearing for months. At some point, we need to proceed. I felt the room spinning. This was impossible. Richard had set me up. Somehow, he'd created evidence of debts I'd never incurred, spending I'd never done. But how could I prove it? The documents had my name on them. That's when Tyler stood up. He'd been sitting quietly in the back row of the courtroom. I'd almost forgotten he was there. But now he walked forward, his tablet clutched in his hands. Excuse me, he said. His voice was small but clear. Your Honor? Judge Morrison looked surprised. Young man, you need to sit down. This isn't— I'm Tyler Anderson, he said. That's my mom and dad. And my dad is lying. The courtroom went silent. Richard's face flushed red. Tyler, sit down right now. No. Tyler looked at the judge. May I show you something that my mom doesn't know about, Your Honor? I've been collecting evidence for 6 months. I have proof. Judge Morrison studied Tyler for a long moment. Then she glanced at me. Mrs. Anderson, is this your son? Yes, Your Honor, I managed to say. And you're aware he has evidence? I just found out this morning, I admitted. I don't even know what he has. The judge looked at Richard. Mr. Anderson? Richard's lawyer started to object, but the judge held up her hand. I want to hear from the father. Richard's jaw worked. Finally, he said, he's a child. He doesn't understand. I understand everything, Tyler interrupted. He walked right up to the judge's bench. I understand that Dad has 3 bank accounts Mom doesn't know about. I understand he's been transferring money out of their joint account for 2 years. I understand he has a girlfriend named Jennifer who he's been spending money on. And I understand those credit card debts aren't Mom's because I watched Dad make the charges himself on her cards and then hide the bills. The courtroom erupted. Webb was on his feet. Patricia looked stunned. I couldn't breathe. Judge Morrison banged her gavel. Order! Everyone sit down. She looked at Tyler. Son, those are serious accusations. Do you have actual evidence, or is this just things you think you saw? Tyler held up the USB drive. I have screenshots, bank records, recordings, text messages, and metadata. 843 pieces of evidence. It's all organized by date and category. I've been documenting everything since last September when I first heard Dad on the phone talking about hiding assets from the divorce. My heart was pounding. I looked at my son, this boy who still slept with a stuffed penguin, who cried during sad movies, who was supposed to be innocent and protected from all of this. And he'd been carrying this burden for 6 months, investigating his own father, gathering evidence to save me. Judge Morrison took the USB drive. Mr. Webb, I'm going to take a recess to review this material. If what this child says is accurate, we have a very different situation than what you've presented. Your Honor, Webb protested, this is highly irregular. We can't just accept evidence from an 11-year-old child who clearly is biased toward his mother. That's my ruling, Counselor, Judge Morrison said sharply. We'll reconvene in 2 hours. Those 2 hours were the longest of my life. Patricia, Tyler, and I sat in a small conference room down the hall. I held my son's hand, unable to speak. Finally, I managed, Tyler, what did you do? He looked up at me with those green eyes, so much older than they should have been. I protected you, Mom, like you've always protected me. But how? How did you get all that information? Tyler explained, and with every word, I felt a mixture of pride and heartbreak. He'd started noticing things months before Richard filed for divorce. Strange phone calls where his father would go outside to talk. Bank statements that would arrive in the mail and disappear before I ever saw them. The way Richard would close his laptop whenever Tyler walked into the room. I knew something was wrong, Tyler said, so I started paying attention. Dad gave me this old tablet, remember? He thought it was wiped, but I restored it. It still had his Google account synced. I could see his calendar, his emails, his location history, everything. He'd been so careful. He'd screenshot emails about offshore accounts. He'd recorded conversations using voice memo apps. When Richard met with his girlfriend Jennifer, Tyler had tracked his father's location. When Richard made charges on credit cards in my name, Tyler photographed the bills before Richard could hide them. There's more, Tyler said quietly. Dad has been planning this for 2 years. I found emails where he talked to his friend about how to minimize exposure in a divorce. He moved money into an account in the Cayman Islands. He bought property in his girlfriend's name. He set up those fake debts to make you look bad. It's all there, Mom. Everything. Patricia Chen was furiously taking notes. Tyler, this is extraordinary. You understand that by presenting this, you're testifying against your father? Tyler's voice was steady. He wanted me to testify that Mom was a failure, that she couldn't take care of me. He told me last week that if I told the judge Mom forgets to pack my lunch and doesn't help with homework, he'd buy me a new gaming system. Tyler looked at me. But you never forget my lunch, Mom. And you help me with homework every night. He was asking me to lie. Tears were streaming down my face. Oh, Tyler, I couldn't let him do that to you, he said. You gave up everything for us, for me. And he was going to take everything from you. It wasn't fair. When we returned to the courtroom, Judge Morrison's expression was grave. She had clearly reviewed at least some of Tyler's evidence. Richard and Marcus Webb were back at their table. But Richard wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. I've reviewed the material provided by Tyler Anderson, the judge began. I've seen enough to know that this case requires a full forensic investigation. Mr. Webb, your client has a lot of explaining to do. Webb tried to speak, but the judge cut him off. I'm not finished. The evidence suggests systematic fraud, perjury, and financial manipulation. I'm ordering a complete forensic audit of all of Mr. Anderson's financial accounts, including any offshore holdings. I'm freezing all assets pending investigation. And I'm issuing a preliminary ruling that Mrs. Anderson will retain the family home and receive temporary support at a level commensurate with the actual marital estate, not the reduced version Mr. Anderson presented. Richard stood up. Your Honor, this is... Sit down, Mr. Anderson. I'm also referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges. Filing false financial disclosures in a divorce proceeding is perjury. Creating fraudulent debts in your spouse's name is identity theft. If even half of what's on this drive is accurate, you're facing serious legal consequences beyond this divorce. I watched my ex-husband, collapse back into his chair. The man who had controlled every aspect of our financial life, who had made me feel incompetent and dependent, was being exposed for the fraud he was. The judge turned to Tyler. Young man, you've done something remarkable today. And I want you to know that while I appreciate your desire to help your mother, what you've witnessed and documented should never have been your burden to carry. A child should never have to investigate their own parent. Tyler nodded. I know, Your Honor, but someone had to tell the truth. The final outcome took months to fully resolve. The forensic audit revealed that Richard had hidden over $1.2 million in assets. He'd transferred money to offshore accounts, purchased real estate in his girlfriend's name, and created false debts to reduce the apparent value of our marital estate. He'd been planning this for 3 years, methodically positioning himself to leave the marriage with the majority of our wealth while making me look like an irresponsible spendthrift. But Tyler's evidence destroyed every lie. The screenshots showed Richard's emails discussing strategies to hide assets. The bank records proved the transfers. The recordings captured Richard coaching his girlfriend on what to say if anyone asked about the properties. The metadata on the fake credit card statements showed they'd been created on Richard's computer. In the end, Judge Morrison awarded me 68% of the marital assets, including the family home. Richard was ordered to pay substantial alimony and child support. His girlfriend returned the properties, though she claimed she'd had no idea they were purchased with marital funds. Richard's financial advisor license was suspended pending investigation. And the district attorney did file charges, though ultimately Richard took a plea deal that included paying restitution and serving 2 years of probation. But the numbers don't tell the real story. The real story is about the relationship between a mother and son, about the kind of love that drives an 11-year-old boy to spend 6 months gathering evidence, organizing files, and carrying the weight of terrible knowledge because he couldn't let his father destroy his mother. The evening after the final judgment was entered, Tyler and I sat on the back porch of our home, the home we got to keep. It was late summer, and fireflies were starting to come out. Tyler had his tablet, but for once he wasn't looking at screens. He was just sitting next to me, close enough that our shoulders touched. Are you mad at me? He asked. I looked at him, surprised. Mad at you? Tyler, you saved us. Why would I be mad? Because I kept secrets. Because I lied about what I was doing. Because His voice broke. Because I helped send Dad to jail. I pulled him close. Oh, honey, no. Your father made his own choices. He chose to lie, to steal, to manipulate. You didn't make him do any of that. You just refused to let him get away with it. He's still my dad, Tyler said quietly. I know. And that makes what you did even braver. It would have been easier to stay quiet, to let him win, to avoid the conflict. But you chose to stand up for what was right, even though it was hard. Even though it meant going against your own father. That takes courage most adults don't have. Tyler was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I heard what he said about you, before he filed for divorce. I heard him on the phone with his girlfriend, saying you were lazy, that you'd never contributed anything, that you'd be nothing without him. And I got so angry, Mom, because I see you. I see how hard you work. I see you doing laundry at midnight and packing my lunch at 6 in the morning and helping me with math even though you're exhausted. I see how you gave up your own career so I could have a mom who was there when I came home from school. I see everything you sacrificed. And he called you lazy. I was crying now. Not sad tears, but the kind that come from being truly seen by another person. You didn't have to do all that for me. Sweetheart. Yes, I did, Tyler said firmly. Because that's what families do. Real families. They protect each other. We sat there until it got dark, not talking, just being together. And I realized that through all the pain of the divorce, through all the manipulation and betrayal, I'd been given something precious. I'd been shown that I'd raised a good human being, a boy who understood justice and courage and love, a son who, when faced with a choice between easy lies and difficult truths, chose truth. Tyler's tablet sat beside him, the device that had held all those secrets for months. Eventually, he picked it up and opened it. "Want to see something?" he asked. "What?" He showed me a document. It was titled Mom's Strengths, and it was a list, dated from 9 months earlier. There were 47 entries. Things like, makes the best grilled cheese sandwiches, and never misses my school events, and knows all the words to my favorite songs, and gave up her job so I could have a mom at home, and still kisses me goodnight even though I'm too old for it. "I made this list," Tyler explained, "when Dad first started saying bad things about you. I wanted to remember the truth, because I knew he was going to try to make everyone believe his lies. I needed proof of who you really are." I hugged my son tightly. "I love you so much, Tyler." "I love you too, Mom. And we're going to be okay now. I promise." And you know what? We were. It wasn't easy. There were hard days and financial struggles and the pain of rebuilding a life. But we had each other. And we had the truth. Tyler went on to middle school, then high school. He's in college now, studying computer forensics. Says he wants to help people who are being manipulated or defrauded. Says he wants to give them the same chance at justice that he gave me. I eventually went back to work. Turns out that accounting degree I'd earned 25 years ago was still valuable. I work for a nonprofit now, helping domestic abuse victims navigate the financial aspects of leaving their situations. I understand what it's like to feel trapped by money, to be made to feel incompetent, to be systematically isolated from your own financial security, and I can help them find their way out. Richard and I have minimal contact now. He has supervised visitation with Tyler twice a month, though Tyler, at 19, rarely takes him up on it. The relationship between father and son never recovered. Some betrayals are too deep. Richard tried to apologize once, sent a long letter claiming he'd been under stress, made mistakes, never meant to hurt anyone. Tyler read it, and then quietly put it in a drawer. "Words are easy," he said. "Actions are what matter." My son taught me that. And he taught me something else too, that strength isn't about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about standing up when you need to, speaking truth when it's hard, and protecting the people you love even when the cost is high. That USB drive, the one Tyler handed to Judge Morrison, is in my safe deposit box now. I've never looked at all the evidence he gathered. I don't need to. I know what my son did for me. I know that when I was at my weakest, when I couldn't see a way forward, he became my strength. People ask me sometimes how Tyler knew to do all that, how an 11-year-old could be so methodical and brave, and I tell them, he learned it from watching me survive. He learned it from every dinner I made when I was too tired to stand. He learned it from every school form I filled out, every load of laundry I folded, every night I read him stories, even though my eyes were closing from exhaustion. He learned that love means showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And then, when it mattered most, he showed up for me.